Good day, Academy Nation and friends. I know summer's winding down, but we are here to bring the heat with our latest post-NAIC webinar, featuring a new format that we hope you will enjoy. Today, American Academy of Actuary staffers will review hot topics discussed during the National Association of Insurance Commissioners' latest meeting in Minneapolis, and look forward to the fall 2025 meeting in Hollywood, Florida as well. My name is Ted Gotch, and I'm the Policy Content and Publications Manager at the Academy. I'm your host for this webinar, where my fellow staffers will share their insights from the NAIC conference, as well as discuss pending issues likely to be tackled in the near future. I'm here with my colleagues Amanda Barry-Moylanen, Will Beneke, Katie Zurich, Rob Fisher, Steve Jackson, and Matthew Williams to break down the goings-on from Minneapolis, and we'll catch up with them in a moment. But first, this is a previously recorded event, so there will be no questions taken. If you do have comments or queries, feel free to reach out to us at publicpolicy@actuary.org. Slides from this webinar will be available on the link below this event on the Academy's YouTube page. But right now, I'd like to bring on Katie, who will share some high-level reflections from the summer meeting. So to get started, Katie, what were some of the highlights of Minneapolis, especially when it came to interacting with stakeholders and our volunteers?
Well, as many of our volunteers can attest, the actuaries start early at all the national meetings. LATIF is all day Saturday and a little bit of Sunday morning, and then HATIF takes us through the late afternoon on Sunday. And I won't spoil Amanda and Matthew's fun talking about what happened at LATIF and HATIF. But I will tell you that Minneapolis offered two unique experiences this year. A handful of life actuaries got a tour of Minneapolis from the Mississippi River on a riverboat on Friday evening. And then the Academy reception and dinner on Sunday evening included lawn bowling. So definitely new experiences for Academy volunteers and staff all around. But in all seriousness, the Academy had some pretty important cross-practice business to attend to this summer, and that's what I'll cover now. We are keeping an eye on the Capital Adequacy Task Force and their progress on the RBC preamble language, because that has tied into the work that is being conducted by the RBC Model Governance Task Force, work that started earlier this year. The Academy submitted letters on both the preamble and on draft principles and questions that were posed in a Model Governance Task Force Chair exposure memo earlier this summer. So we provided those comment letters and then provided oral comments during the Model Governance Task Force meeting early Tuesday morning during the summer meeting. In addition to reinforcing the need for transparency and consistency during our comments, we encouraged leveraging existing frameworks, including our own ASOP 56 on modeling. The other cross-practice work that the Academy has been involved in is with the AI model law request for information. So the chair of the Big Data and AI Working Group emphasized the RFI part of the exposure. They were really looking for feedback and really requesting information. The group has not begun drafting the model law, but they are looking for feedback about where we are and where we need to go next. So more to come on that. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Ted.
Thank you, Katie. Next, let me turn to Amanda for her recap of what went on in Minneapolis from the life perspective. Amanda?
Thank you, Ted. It was great to be at the NAIC meeting in Minneapolis this year. The Life Practice Council, or the LPC, was very busy at this meeting as usual, with many reports involving intense academy preparation leading up to the meeting. We were all pleased to see those efforts pay off through substantive contributions from the Academy on many life practice issues. I would like to begin with an observation on one trend, which is that in addition to supporting the work streams of the Life Actuarial Task Force, or LATIF, the LPC has also been increasingly involved in the risk-based capital conversations at the executive level at the NAIC. As we just heard, the Academy State Public Policy Director delivered verbal comments at the RBC Model Governance Task Force August 12th meeting. Those remarks reinforce the written comments that the LPC, HPC, CPC, and RINFRIC submitted on the task force preliminary principles and responses to questions in a July 24th letter, which is available online at actuary.org. That letter delves into a range of key issues vis-a-vis the initial proposed RBC principles and recommended some specific changes. The actuarial perspective is well represented through that joint letter and Katie's comments on site at that meeting. A key topic that the LPC volunteers addressed at the latest meeting was the retrospective adoption of the application of VM22. Before that meeting, the Annuity Reserve and Capital Subcommittee weighed in with written commentary for some optionality and a phase-in approach to retrospective adoption, and our volunteers effectively presented those ideas to LATIF directly at that meeting and answered LATIF's questions. These considerations provided on behalf of the profession can now be weighted as the proposal for retrospective adoption is decided in the coming months. Another development of note is that the VM22 amendments, i.e. APF 2025-11, were adopted by LATIF and A Committee and will be in effect for year-end 2025. This new PBR framework for non-variable annuities was developed and studied for many months with significant feedback from the LPC. A key moment of this NAIC meeting was LATIF's adoption of APF 2025-04, which will incorporate the new generator of economic scenarios into the valuation manual for 2026. That is a project which the Academy's Economic Scenario Generator Subcommittee has monitored and provided essential feedback on to the NAIC's GOES subgroup. That subgroup continues to work on the model governance framework for the generator and gave an update to LATIF on that. There was also discussion about the VM21 supplement blanks during the report from the Variable Annuity Capital and Reserve subgroup at LATIF. Our Variable Annuity Reserve and Capital Subcommittee has been engaged with that subgroup on this and will continue to monitor those issues and provide feedback. There's currently an exposure out until September 12th. One of the most watched recent developments coming out of the NAIC was the A Committee's adoption of Actuarial Guideline 55 in July. That guideline is designed to enhance reserve adequacy requirements for life insurers by prescribing an asset adequacy testing methodology, evaluating ceded reinsurance as a component of asset-intensive business. Leading up to that adoption, the LPC was very engaged in providing comprehensive, substantive comments from the life actuarial perspective. At the summer meeting, a new development was that LATIF exposed potential reporting templates for comment. The LPC is reviewing and planning to provide feedback. And then lastly, LATIF also exposed APF 2025-05, which provides clear definitions for what constitutes contractually guaranteed revenue sharing income in VM20 and VM21. And those are all of the updates that I have coming out of the NAIC meeting from the life perspective. So back to you, Ted.
Thanks, Amanda, for that. Amanda, you mentioned that the Actuarial Guideline 55 was adopted by the A Committee in Minneapolis. Will the LPC continue to engage with AG 55? Can we expect anything from the LPC on this new piece of regulation, I'm wondering?
Sure. So as I just said, the LPC is monitoring those new regulatory templates that were just exposed and will likely be providing comments to those in the beginning of September. We're also working on an issue brief on AG 55 to provide considerations to practicing actuaries who are going to be sort of in the thick of working on this business in the coming year. So stay tuned for that. We're hoping to have that released in the next couple of months.
Got it. Amanda, thanks for that. Really appreciate it. So, well, Rob, what can you tell us about what happened in the world of property and casualty?
Thanks, Ted. Yeah, so while we were in Minneapolis, Academy staff and volunteers had a public presentation during the Casualty Actuarial and Statistical Task Force meeting. And we also, while we're there, met with the leadership of the Cybersecurity Working Group. And we also had some conversations with the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud. So moving through some of the P&C related highlights at some of these meetings at the national meeting. The At the Casualty Actuarial and Statistical Task Force, the heard and adopted reports from the Actuarial Opinion Working Group (AOWG) and the Statistical Data Working Group. The task force also heard a presentation from Roosevelt Mosley on the topic of missing data. He covered how there have been concerns that this issue is leading to an increase in excessive and inadequate rates, and spoke to the ways that some of the models can use data sets with missing data, but the picture is incomplete right now. The topic got some animated discussion from regulators and interested parties in the room, and was floated as a possible addition to the task force's charges in the coming months. During the actuarial updates portion of the agenda, I provided an update to the regulators on the activities of the CPC and COPL since the last in-person CASIF meeting. And the other professional updates to the CASCF, we included the ABCD from Daryl Knapp and the Kevin Dyke from the ASB. So during the joint catastrophe insurance working group and FEMA working group, there was some discussion about the changes that are coming to FEMA at the federal level. A number of FEMA reform bills have been introduced in Congress, but the main focus on the NAIC's part was the federal government's FEMA Review Council, which formed in May and has publicly stated that they're seeking to shift the role of disaster aid back to the states. The council is expected to release public recommendations in November, and NAIC is closely monitoring that situation as well. At the cybersecurity working group, the focus of the meeting was more so on cybersecurity than cyber insurance in this meeting. The chair of the working group, Michael Peterson, led a discussion on the cybersecurity event notification portal. And so that's something that the working group is still interested in getting feedback on. And there was also a significant emphasis placed on streamlining cyber incident reporting. And the meeting ended with a discussion on the changes made to the cybersecurity supplement. The Anti-Fraud Task Force heard a presentation from the Carpenters Union on some of the workers' compensation fraud techniques that have been plaguing their profession as of late. And there was also a suggestion to add long-term care as a category of insurance fraud on the task force's online fraud reporting system to help with overall data collection. The Academy also continued our ongoing engagement with the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud and met with them after the meeting. So the C Committee and the Homeowners Market Data Call Working Group, both during their meetings, held discussions on their open exposures and heard verbal comments from the interested parties and regulators in attendance. The C Committee discussed their affordability and availability playbook, and the Homeowners Market Data Call Working Group discussed the changes to their definitions and updates to the existing annual data call, and negotiated when the call will go into effect. Some of the key takeaways captured during the national meeting is that data availability is going to continue to be an issue for CASTIF. And also, after some higher level discussions about homeowners availability and affordability at national meetings the last couple of years, I think we're going to start seeing more action items coming from the NAIC based on the two new exposures that I spoke to, and I would expect more to come. And then also we heard from the cybersecurity folks that in the short term, the working group is likely going to focus more on cybersecurity, but with cyber insurance remaining a part of their charges, the Academy is going to continue to remain a resource to the NAIC in cyber. So that's all I got, Ted.
Appreciate that. Hey, I heard you mention the C Committee's exposure of the affordability and availability playbook outline. Is the CPC working on a response to this resource?
Yes, we're going to respond to both, but the homeowners insurance task force within the CPC has already submitted comments to the C Committee's playbook. The playbook was pretty lengthy, contained a lot of factual information and links on regulations that are out there and resources for consumers on a pretty wide variety of states and based on catastrophe type. So our task force kept the response to a pretty high level and covered general topics of impact of costs, drivers of incurred losses, evolving methods of estimating catastrophic losses, enhancing affordability and consumer education. So that will be posted, and the our comments on the other one will be coming soon as well.
Great, Rob. Thanks for that. Now, Matthew, fill us in on everything HPC, please.
Thank you, Ted. Hi, everyone. Matthew Williams. I'm the Policy Project Manager for Health at the Academy. Our biggest presentation that we had was on Sunday, August 10th, and that was to the Health Actuarial Task Force, also known as HATF. Katie Zurich, our Director for Public Policy Outreach, provided a Health Practice Council update. Within that, it's since the last meeting, and within that, talked about one of the biggest items that we produced was our final report to the Health RBC e-working group on our H2 underwriting risk component and managed care credit calculation in the Health RBC formula. So that's something our volunteers have been working on for the past several years. We're very happy that we were able to finalize the report and submit it to the NAIC. During the course of the summer, they've received feedback and some comments, and we're currently working through those at the moment. So stay tuned for some future updates from the Academy on that. Some of the other work that we worked on since the last meeting as well was the impact of COVID-19 on long-term care insurance issue brief that came out during the summer. It's actually an update from an issue brief we did a few years ago on what impacts, just like what it sounds like, just what impacts COVID-19 had on long-term care insurance experience. So that's up on our website as well. We spent a considerable amount of time this summer working on our health insurance market dynamics resource guide. And within that, we have our annual premium drivers webinar and issue brief, which our stakeholders look forward to receiving from the Academy. So we were able to put those out as well right before the annual NAIC meeting. So those are actually up on our website. We also heard a presentation from Annette James, who is our Vice President for Health at the Academy, and she presented on the 2026 health insurance premiums in focus, policy changes and impacts on market stability. So this is related to the work that we've been working on this summer related to the individual and small group markets, Medicaid and employer markets, how those things impact stability, how different policy changes are affecting them, and also some of the interconnectivity between the markets. So it was a pretty interesting work that we've been working on and presentation from Annette. And just wanted to thank both Katie and Annette for doing a great job sharing the perspectives from the Academy on these presentations. Related to priorities, like I just mentioned from the NAIC meeting, the 2026 affordable care or individual and small group markets are definitely high priorities for the Academy's work, and also high priorities for the current federal administration and state regulators as well. So that's something we're going to be keeping an eye on here, specifically related to affordability and accessibility of health insurance, and also accountability and flexibility of said health insurance. So those are, two big areas that we're keeping track of. Another big priority is long-term care insurance. Just one observation I want to share from this meeting is that regulators continue their focus on the issue of long-term care insurance, or LTCI. During the meeting, they actually adopt the long-term care insurance multi-state review framework, which is also called the MSA framework. Regulators are really hopeful that this framework will provide some consistency on how rate review is done at the state level for long-term care insurance rates. So that's basically an endpoint to a lot of work that's been going on in discussions at the NAIC over the past years, but it's also a starting point for future work on how that's actually going to be implemented. So the Academy is really excited on how can we help regulators with that type of work. That's all that I had.
I appreciate that, Matthew. I heard you mention about some of the upcoming changes in the individual and Medicaid healthcare markets that are of interest to the NAIC. Does the Academy have any resources that you can share?
We do, and I actually hinted at this a little bit ago. We produced a resource guide on health insurance market dynamics, and it's relevant to any NAIC stakeholders, both state and federal government. Includes information on the individual Medicaid and employer markets. Like I mentioned earlier, we released our premium drivers issue brief, our annual issue brief. That's currently up on there, and we also have some more information on the interconnectivity of the different markets and some more on stability and other policy changes that affect the dynamics, between the markets. So pretty interesting. We pulled everything together as a resource and have it up on our website. And we'll provide a link later for folks. If you haven't already seen it, I encourage you to check that out.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. So Will, what's the latest out of Remfrick at the meeting?
Hi, everyone. I'm Will Benke. I'm the Policy Project Manager for the Risk Management Financial Reporting Council, and I'll walk you through quickly the RIMFRIC activities and overview of the Summer National Meeting. So quickly touching on the aforementioned RBC preamble that Katie talked about. So the Prudential Regulation Committee at the Academy has submitted a couple of different comment letters to the Capital Adequacy Task Force over a couple different exposure periods. So the task force is still weighing various comments they've received and will schedule a meeting in October 2025 to finalize the preamble revisions. In addition to the AI model law that was also previously discussed, the Big Data and AI Working Group talked about their AI systems evaluation tool, which is currently out for exposure and has a deadline of September 5th. And so the purpose of this tool is to provide a standardized, efficient way for regulators to collect information about insurers' use of AI during an examination or investigation. So the Academy is currently working on putting together a comment letter to respond to the NAIC to support them in this effort. And once their comment period ends and they go over their comments they received back, they will select states for a pilot to pilot this tool in the future. The third-party data and models working group also had AI-related initiatives. This working group is charged with developing a framework for the regulatory oversight of third-party data and predictive models. As an initial step in this effort, they're attempting to define third-party data and model vendors for future use in the framework. So at the Summer National Meeting, they discussed an initial draft definition of third-party vendors and the distinction between data vendors and model vendors. So in the upcoming weeks, they're going to expose a revised definition based on the discussion at the Summer National Meeting for a comment period, and then you work that into the future framework. Switching topics, so going into a couple international updates. So the NAIC's Aggregation Method Implementation Working Group is charged with coordinating the implementation of the insurance capital standards within the U.S. aggregation method. And so back in 2024, a provisional aggregation method was considered for the purposes of the comparability assessment. And so the current work of the NAIC working group is to update that aggregation method into a final version. So as part of their summer meeting a couple of weeks ago, their working group approved a recommendation for an excessive relative ratio, or ERR, approach to scalars to be used in the final aggregation method. And the working group aims to have a final draft of the AM in the second quarter of 2026 before the IAIS begins to assess the implementation of the ICS as early as 2027. The IAIS also has released a couple relevant application papers that connect to RIMFRAC activity. One is on the supervision of AI, which focuses on the best practices for supervising AI used by insurers, with a focus on both consumer protection and prudential soundness. The other paper is on the supervision of climate-related risks in the insurance sector, which aims to support efforts to integrate climate-related risks into supervision of the insurance markets and promote a generally consistent approach to addressing climate-related risks. The Climate and Resiliency Task Force at the NAIC summer meeting announced the anticipation of completing a couple different work streams by their 2025 fall meeting, one of which is the Disaster Preparedness Handbook, which will provide a guideline on pre-disaster public education and post-disaster regulator responses, data on the impact of past disasters, common questions from the public grouped by peril, and state-specific case studies. The second work stream they're anticipating being finished is the Natural Catastrophe Risk Dashboard, which will capture the national metrics to better understand catastrophes and protection gaps. Finally, the Group Solvency Issues Working Group and the ORSA subgroup updated their draft of the ORSA guidance manual. They adopted a series of 5 proposed updates. And so the next step in this process will be it will be sent to the Financial Condition Committee or E-Committee to consider their proposed additions before they are formally implemented into the updated ORSA guidance manual. And that's it for me, Ted.
Okay, thanks, Will. So you talked about a couple soon to be finalized NAIC work products in the Disaster Preparedness Handbook and the Natural Catastrophe Risk Dashboard. Can you talk about how those relate to the climate risk initiatives currently underway in REMFREC committees?
Yeah, not a problem. So the Climate Change Joint Committee has recently released a paper on climate data from an actuarial perspective on quality challenges and effective risk mitigation. So this explores the importance and uses of publicly available catastrophe data. So I think, that crosses multiple lines of, similar topics, as well as a couple in-progress issue briefs we're anticipating being finished by early 2026. One of covers the impact of climate change on insurance affordability, specifically highlighting the availability or lack of coverage protecting policyholders against weather-related losses, and accessibility, specifically the insufficient capital available to insurers and reinsurers to cover catastrophic losses. A second work stream is working with the Homeowners Task Force on a case study of Florida. This issue brief examines the Florida insurance market by summarizing conditions before and after key legislation was passed, by evaluating whether or not the enacted policies have achieved their intended goal of curbing rapidly rising insurance costs.
Great. Well, thank you, Will. Appreciate that. So, Steve, can you give us an update from research at NAIC?
Sure, Ted. Thanks. I'm Steve Jackson, Director of Research. And the recent NAIC meeting in Indianapolis was exciting and productive time for our research program, even though we weren't actually presenting any research directly. Before I comment on 4 areas where we are doing research working directly with the NAIC, I thought I'd share 2 general observations I had from the meeting. The first was the overlap of issues being discussed at length at the meetings with various of our research efforts. Whether it's VM22, Amanda mentioned that in addition to the adoption of the current evaluation manual chapter, the LATIF was discussing possible retrospective application. In that discussion, the possibility of another field test was raised, a follow-up to the field test we just finished. And we then had several conversations with our partners in the previous field test about that possibility. On climate-related financial disclosures, Climate Resilience Task Force had discussions there, and both the current climate-related financial disclosures group in RIMFRIC, their work, as well as a research project that we're starting to discuss with them, overlap pretty substantially with what the task force at the NAIC is discussing. Anti-fraud efforts, we're starting a couple of efforts that map in homeowners insurance availability and affordability. We have a project started that maps into some of the issues of concern. So the first was that overlap. The second was the number of times people approached us, and this is members of the Academy, regulators, stakeholders, approached us during the meetings to talk about possible research topics. And this was rewarding in 2 ways. The first was it gave us ideas for research that people might find useful, and we're following up on some of those. But it also indicated the general acceptance of the high quality of work that the Academy research produces, and that's valued at the NAIC and by our stakeholders. So that was rewarding also. Beyond these general observations, 4 projects I wanted to just mention briefly. The first, following the completion of the original VM22 field test, we are now in discussions led by the C3 work group of the Academy and the NAIC's Life RBC task force to conduct a field test on C3 factors that is likely to happen next year. On title insurance, where the Academy was asked a little while ago by the Title Insurance Task Force at the NAIC to look into the expenses that are associated with title insurance prior to the issuance of policies. In September, we will be presenting our first substantive results to that group, having presented 2 or 3 times before to get their input. And so that's quite exciting. The two new NAIC executive task forces have also produced opportunities for the Academy to contribute. Will was mentioning the aggregation method implementation work group, and for that group, there are both Academy volunteer. The task force or work group has set up a technical input advisory group, and there are Academy members, mostly from the Life Practice Council, working in one of the work streams there on valuation. But there's a second work stream on scalars, which Will mentioned. And as the Academy wrote the booklet that guided the IAS on scalars during the development of the aggregation method, we were asked to help on that work stream. And we're doing some additional research to help the task force make its final determinations. And the aim there, as Will mentioned, is to complete that work by the end of this year. So it's quite rapid progress. The risk-based capital model governance task force that Katie and others mentioned has also provided an opportunity to examine the relationship between risk-based capital ratios and insolvency. And this is an issue that various of the RBC groups across the Academy and we in research have been interested in for a while, but this provided a real occasion. And what we're trying to do is update and extend prior work done by the Academy, by CAS, and by the SOA. And we've now assembled a cross-practice work group from casualty, life, and health to oversee the project. And we've begun looking at some of the numbers to see what we can find there. Again, while the Model Governance Task Force aims to complete its work this year, it's unlikely we would complete this research project this year, but we are likely to have at least preliminary results we could share later in the year with the task force. So, as always, the NIC meeting was exciting, exhausting, and interesting. Seeing lots of people that we've met at prior meetings, meeting new people, and the occasional drama during some of the meetings at the NAIC helped make the meeting memorable and also pave the way for more productive presentations and interactions at the next meeting and beyond. Back to you, Ted.
Great, Steve. Thanks. I think I heard you mention a research project on RBC and insolvency, which follows work done by the Academy, the CAS, and the SOA. I was just wondering, if so much has already been done, what will the Academy's current effort add?
Thanks for asking that, Ted. It is a question we're asked a fair bit. So let me just mention 3 things quickly that we have. So the first is all 3 prior efforts looked at RBC ratios as a driver of insolvency, but they looked at it as one of several without any particular focus on the RBC ratio. We're focused on the RBC ratio, although we will certainly look at other factors that we have to control for in some way. Second is the most recent of those 3 efforts by the SOA was finished in 2017 using data up until 2015. We'll be using data up to 2014, so we'll have 9 years of additional data to look at the relationship. In addition, SOA only looked at 76 companies. We're going to be looking at hundreds. So we'll also have a broader scope. And finally, where appropriate, we will be using multivariate statistical analysis, where the previous efforts all used univariate analysis. So they looked at one factor at a time. We're going to do some analysis that will look at all of the factors at the same time, so we can see relatively how important they are that way.
All right. Well, thanks everyone so much for all those updates. So the Academy has had a lot of engagement with regulators and other key stakeholders, as you heard, in Minneapolis. But what can we all expect from the NAIC in the coming months leading up to the December meeting in South Florida? Why don't we start with Amanda and hear what's up next for life? Amanda?
Thanks, Ted. As to what comes next for life, the LPC will continue to engage in pivotal conversations around the implementation of VM22, the GHOST project, and Actuarial Guideline 55, as well as the RBC conversations. For its part, the C1 subcommittee plans to provide a substantive update on their COO comparable attributes research project for the risk-based capital investment risk evaluation subcommittee. And as Steve alluded to, our C3 subcommittee is working on implementing a field test, developing and implementing a field test in 2026. We will also continue to monitor the RBC Model Governance Task Force, since they seem to be initially focused on the life space. To close, I can share that the LPC's planning for the December 2025 meeting is already well underway. And speaking to the LPC volunteers at and after the meeting and helping them begin to advance the work needed heading into December. I know that the LPC is focused on developing feedback to regulators that draws on the best of the profession's unique expertise and experience on life practice issues. You can stay apprised of our work leading up to the December meeting by visiting the public policy section of the Academy's website at actuary.org. That's all I have. Thank you, Ted.
Great. Appreciate that, Amanda. So next is Rob, who will discuss casualty. Rob, any insights you can share?
Yeah, so the between now and the next national meeting, the Actuarial Opinion Working Group is expected to finalize their annual guidance. Then that will help feed into Koppelfer's opinion seminar and practice note that will be published by the end of the year. And also the NAIC's Market Data Call Working Group is seeking to finish their updates to their data call by the end of the year. So the next national meeting will either see a final exposure or a adoption, and we'll also get a final confirmation on what years the initial data call will include. So,
Okay. Thank you for that. Now let's head over to Matthew and health. Matthew, anything to share?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. I think, key takeaways, what's up next is just a continued focus on rate filings for health insurance. Within our dynamics resource page, we also had a rate review timeline. So that's one of the things that we want people to make note of, that, things don't happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of different dates that are floating around when folks are filling out information to develop rates for health insurance. So just want that to be on people's minds as they're going forward. So just continue to focus on that, and also the future of the enhanced tax credits in the ACA markets. Those are set to expire this year, and there's a lot of questions both from regulators at the NAIC, state insurance, companies as well, on how that will interact with individual markets. So just kind of stay tuned on that. Just want to continue to point folks to our market dynamics resource guide webpage for any late breaking updates on that. Also want to make note of just continued innovation. That's always a big topic, both for healthcare coverage in general and also long-term care insurance. On the latter, there's been a lot of work at the state level on long-term care insurance, what that means, affordability. Some states have pioneered some public programs for that, or public-private partnership programs for long-term care insurance. So we're just interested on what that looks like here in the future as well. And then particularly related to the next NAIC meeting, later on this fall, as I mentioned earlier, we're working through comments on our H2 underwriting report that we had submitted to the NAIC. So going through that, addressing comments and also addressing some of the calculations and items with that in that as well. So should have some more updates here in the next few months prior to the next NAIC meeting.
I appreciate that update, Matthew. Will, what do you have to report with REMFRIC?
Yeah, Ted, we're staying plugged into a couple different issues. One being the RBC preambles discussion that I mentioned earlier. They should have a meeting between now and the fall meeting, but depending on the working group's decision on a future exposure and that, we're staying plugged into that conversation as well as the broader RBC discussion. As well as AI governance remains an ever-present issue, particularly within RIMFRIC committees. So the ongoing AI model law discussion, as well as the continued AI model bulletin adoption, which now been adopted in 24 jurisdictions as of the summer national meeting, as well as the current exposure of the AI systems evaluation tool. We'll see how that develops between now and the fall meeting, as well as the future exposure for the third-party data and model vendors definitions from the third-party data and models working group. I think those are the top issues we're looking forward to in the fall.
Great. Steve, what do you have? What's new to report from research going forward?
Thanks, Ted. So looking ahead to December, there are several areas where we will be involved in discussions and maybe doing presentations, whether it's the C3 field test, anti-fraud efforts, risk-based capital model governance task force, or the aggregation method implementation work group. Will be involved whether we do presentations. Two areas where I expect we'll do presentations directly. One on title insurance, where in addition to the presentation we're doing virtually in September, they've already indicated they'll be meeting in person at the December meeting and have asked us to present additional results there. And secondly, the Actuaries Climate Index, which was originally produced in 2016, is very close to having a fully renewed and revised version 2.0 that I expect will be ready to publish by the time of the December meeting. And if so, anticipate doing a presentation either the Climate Resilience Task Force or to the catastrophe risk subgroup, both of which have heard discussions about the climate index in the past. So exciting December meeting coming up for us too.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Katie, any updates that you can share?
Sure. So in addition to the, planning for the professionalism and practice council updates that we do, I'll reiterate what Steve said earlier. The risk-based capital model governance task force is moving very quickly, and they hope to have their work done by the end of the year, or at least the first part of it. We are expecting any minute now an updated version of preliminary draft principles that we can comment on. So of course we'll plan to comment, and I imagine we'll be commenting in person when we head to Hollywood, Florida. And then as Will mentioned, the Big Data and AI Working Group is continuing their work around whether or not they do a model law, but they also have their systems evaluation tool out for comment with a due date of September 5th. So that's certainly on our radar. And we should hear from them sometime later in the fall what they're planning to do with the model law based on the comments they received this summer. So those are the things we're keeping in mind as we make plans for the Academy for the fall national meeting in Hollywood, Florida. I don't know if they have lawn bowling in Hollywood, Florida, but members and volunteers should definitely be keeping an eye out for our fall reception and dinner invitation. Lori and Geraldine and the Academy team are definitely cooking up something fun because they always do. So we hope everyone can join us in December.
Thanks for that, and thank everyone for all of your updates here. Viewers, we hope you have enjoyed this post-NAIC webinar. If you have any questions on the activities we highlighted or want to know more about the Academy's engagement with the NAIC, please reach out to any of the staff on this webinar. We can all be found at the website, www.actuary.org, and our contact information is included in the link slide deck. You can always also reach out to the team by emailing publicpolicy@actuary.org. And don't forget our regular blog updates. Not only do we regularly post about the NAIC meeting, but we also highlight some of the related work products and presentations that our volunteers do on these topics and more. But before we go, there are several Academy events we want you to know about. The Academy will be hosting the Future of Retirement Summit in Washington next month, and we'd love to see you there. Towards the end of the year, the Academy will hold its Life and Health Seminar, as well as the P&C Opinion Seminar. And coming in March 2026, the Academy's new spring meeting will be paired with Hill Visits, something you won't want to miss. To learn more about these events and others, go to www.actuary.org/calendar. We also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and to head over to www.actuary.org to peruse the Academy's policy forum, the Actuarially Sound blog, and the Actuary Voices podcast. And if you are a member and interested in getting more involved with the Academy, let us know during the annual call for volunteers, which is happening right now. We hope you will join us again in the late fall, following the NAIC's fall national meeting set for December 8th through 11th in Hollywood, Florida. If you will be in South Florida, let us know. We'd love to have you join us for our reception and dinner. And finally, don't hesitate to tell your colleagues and coworkers about this webinar so they can get in on all that the Academy and the NAIC are doing together in the insurance space. Until then, be well.